Okay, she be going every single night. Day and night on my mind, pushing cute vibe.
How's it going, everybody? This is Tyler Driver. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, so it's time for a little story time here. Now, as I've mentioned previously before, at one point in time, I was playing football during my middle school and high school days, and mostly it was in Chatham, but I also spent a couple years playing it in high school in Livingston, and also during my senior year in Kennewan. And usually, those were some of my best times. Those were the times where I got to break from all the other things I had to worry about in my life, and just get to spend some time with my friends, and most importantly, play some hard-hitting football. But I also had a passion for winning as well, and unfortunately I wasn't on a whole lot of winning teams during my time in football, but there was one season in particular where we almost won it all, and that was when I was in the 8th grade in Chatham Middle School in 2011 when we made an improbable run all the way to our league's championship game. So I'm going to be talking about the improbable run, the team that I was on, the 8th grade Chatham Cougars football program, and talk about how we had our struggles early in the season and how we managed to make it all the way to the championship game after everything we've been through and nearly won the whole entire thing. Now, this was my second season playing football. I had just played football the previous year in the 7th grade, and I did get quite a bit of playing time and even a couple tackles as well, but really everybody was going to get a major role during that year, and I couldn't really find any photos whatsoever of my playing days in middle school, so these were a couple photos that I had from my days during my freshman year in high school a year later. But again, this is just mainly focused on what happened during our 8th grade season, and really it started out rather hot because at the beginning of the year we played against New Providence at New Providence, and we played very well. We ran all over them on offense, and we just rolled all over them and scored a dominating win to start the year at 1-0, which was a better start than the season before when we started our season with a tie against Springfield, which of course is where I live now. After that though, we went on a rather rough stretch. During our game against Cranford, the second game of the season, we struggled mightily on offense, and we were just having a very hard time. We couldn't really get anything going on offense, and while we did hang in there on defense, unfortunately we just struggled to really bring them down, and unfortunately we ended up losing that game to a couple of touchdowns, and unfortunately it did not get any better in the next game. We played pretty well against Scotch Plains during the early part of the first half of that game, but unfortunately after an interception we ended up having what I thought was probably one of the most embarrassing moments, well, probably the single most embarrassing moment of our season, when our quarterback ended up fumbling the football, and as we saw, some guy named Rashawn Gary ended up picking it up and running it all the way back to the end zone for Scotch Plains touchdown. We did hang in there on defense. We did all we could to be able to slow them down a little bit, but ultimately they ended up winning that one 13-0, unfortunately. But it was still a pretty close game, but that one moment obviously was really such an embarrassing moment of our season, and really one that I thought that we would really never come back from. By the way, in case all of you are wondering what has happened to Rashawn Gary since then, he plays now for the Green Bay Packers in the NFL, so I'll leave that mark on that. Anyway, so obviously that was a pretty bad 2-game stretch, but fortunately we were able to get back on track the next game against Perth Amboy, which was a team that we had demolished the year earlier, and we pretty much did the same thing again. We held them scoreless, and we were able to get a victory there. And really the ironic part about that is that at this time the season before, we had won pretty much all of our games at home. At this time though, we had lost both of our home games, but we had won both of our away games, so we were a team that could contend when we were on the road. We just needed to find a way to be able to win our last home game. In any case, we had to fight for a spot in the playoffs. Unfortunately, things did not get much better the next game against Melbourne, which was a team that I would face off again a couple years later in my sophomore year in Livingston, and again during my junior year there. While we were there against Melbourne, we tried our best to fight against them, but unfortunately we struggled mightily. We did get a touchdown, but it was hard for us to be able to overcome the early deficit that we had, and unfortunately we ended up losing to Melbourne 13-7, I think, that day, or maybe 14-8. I really don't remember what the score was. It was a one-score game, so we kept it close, but unfortunately we did not work right all day. And really at that point we were 2-3, so we were struggling up at that point, and unfortunately we were a team that did not look like we were going to be a contender for the playoffs, and really it was just such hard luck that we were going through that year. We were a good team, especially after what happened the season before when we won nearly all but one of our regular season games and made it to the playoffs, but unfortunately this season it was just really much more of a struggle. We were just trying to everything we can, but we were just having a lot of trouble keeping things together, and unfortunately it looked like things were not going to get any better from there. However, I think the turning point of our season will come at Parsippany. If we still wanted any chance to be able to contend for a playoff spot, we had to play well against Parsippany. In our 6th game of the season, we were able to take the early lead against Parsippany by a couple of touchdowns, and we were looking pretty good. But you gotta remember, we actually played them during our playoff game in the 7th grade the season before, and while we had a lead before, we unfortunately lost it late, and unfortunately we were knocked out in the very first round of playoffs. So we all knew that Parsippany was very capable of making a comeback, and unfortunately they did that again. Parsippany was able to come back, but however, our main goal was this time was to not let them get ahead of us. We obviously wanted to win the game, but unfortunately the game ended in a tie. So obviously it wasn't a loss, thankfully. However, it didn't really feel like a win. But in my opinion, I feel like that was the turning point of the season. The reason why I said that is because that was pretty much the best that we had played against a really tough opponent all season. And because of that, we were able to find a way to be able to compete, and it really gave us some newfound confidence as well. It gave us the belief that, hey, we can still compete for a championship. And that really brought a lot of momentum for us heading into our next couple of games. And if we could continue to play the way we did that night against Parsippany, we were going to be up there as competitors for the 8th grade title. And that was what we did the very next game against Berkeley Heights. We were able to absolutely demolish them. In fact, we had our largest margin of victory of that season, thankfully. And I even got a chance to play the majority of the second half of that game as well, because we were ahead by so much that really they wanted to get our backups an opportunity. So I got a chance to play a lot in that game, and that was really the most amount of time that I actually got to play in a game that season. So I really got to enjoy that, but unfortunately I did not get any tackles or sacks or something like that. But the pivotal moment was against Summit. Now, we were supposed to have that game the week later, but because of a nor'easter that knocked out all the power and basically kept us out of school for a week, we had that pushed back to really the very first weekend in November. And so obviously this was a huge rivalry game between Chatham and Summit, because there was no bigger rival to Chatham than Summit. And at this point, last I heard, they were tied in both of the previous games that they competed against Summit up until that point. So this was a big game. We knew that if we won that game, we were going to be in the playoffs. And we came up there and we competed. And I was a part of that final defensive stop that was able to keep Summit from getting all the way to the end zone. And as a result, we were able to win that game and clinch our spot into the playoffs for the 2nd year in a row. And for a team that really hated Summit and really wanted revenge on them, boy, it was great to finally get the Chatham Cougars that first win in football against Summit. And it was such a relieving moment to be able to get back into the playoffs after all the struggles that we had been through that season. At that point, we were really considered a dark horse to contend for a championship. It was going to be a very long road to be able to get up to the championship game, but at that point, we knew that we can contend as long as we continue to play the way we did at Summit. And believe it or not, that's what we did in our first playoff game. We were able to learn exactly what went wrong the last time we were in a playoff game, and in our revenge game against Cranford at home, we were able to find a way to stop them and even make them scoreless as well. We kept them from basically getting in the end zone, and we pretty much inflicted the pain on them that they did to us and made them feel exactly what we went through during our week 2 game, and we were able to win our very first playoff game 13-0 to be able to head to our semifinal round against Springfield, which was another rematch that we had the season before in the first game of the year, in which that one ended in a tie. And we were able to come away with a big victory in that one and compete for the 8th grade championship game against Richmond Borough. And that was a team that we actually did a scrimmage against at the very beginning of that season in the 8th grade. And we did pretty well on offense and defense that day. It was actually a pretty good scrimmage, and I even had an opportunity to play and almost got myself a tackle on that one. But hey, it was an opportunity now to take what we learned from that scrimmage and be able to translate that into our championship game. And it was really going to be a very tough fight. This was such an improbable run for us because mainly after our game against Melbourne, we were able to find a way to overcome all those struggles and we would go on a winning streak. We were able to start playing well in every game afterwards, and we were just dominated. And as a result, we came into Richmond Richmond Borough with a wild momentum, and not only that, we were playing at home in front of our hometown fans, so if we were able to win that game, it was going to be huge town-wide. In fact, we weren't the only ones. Our 6th grade team also competed in the championship game, and although they lost, they were able to score and play very well, so we knew that that was going to be an opportunity to overcome what the 6th grade team did and try to win it for ourselves. And we were extremely competitive during that game. For the first 3 quarters, we held Richmond Borough scores, and really, we almost got in the end zone a number of times, and I feel like we should have scored at least 2 or 3 times that day, but ultimately, in the end, it really just wasn't enough. Knowing Richmond Borough, they were able to find a way to power into the end zone late, and unfortunately, I only got a single play that game, and that was really during an extra point attempt in which Richmond Borough converted, so really, they were trying to keep all the best guys out there, but ultimately, Richmond Borough ended up winning the state championship, and that was a really tough ending to what had been such an improbable run that season. But it was a real team effort all the way, and really it took a whole lot of work to be able to get something done, and we had a lot of great players on that team as well, particularly one Greg Sacheski, who I was a classmate with during my time in Chatham. He was actually the 8th grade MVP for that season, and really well deservedly. I was watching him on the sidelines when he was playing, and he was probably not just the best player on our team, but the best player in the entire 8th grade league in our division. And really, it was great to see him play. I don't know what he's doing right now, but I just want to let him know that, you know, I'm glad that I got to play that season with him along my time in Chatham, and hope he's doing well as well with all the other guys that I played with in Chatham as well, because I missed them quite a bit. But overall, this was really a story of never giving up. This was a story about how we were able to find a way to overcome and really just come together as one, to be able to come through and be able to make this run all the way to the championship game. And although it didn't end the way that we wanted, we showed that as long as we stood together, nothing is impossible. And that's really a model that carries in sports throughout this entire time. And we were able to translate that here during the second half of our 8th grade season. So basically, the moral of the story here is if you're feeling down and if for some reason you are struggling, don't give up. Come together with all your fellow classmates as well as all your other people that you're around with and find a way to stick together, band together, because you need to rely on them to be able to succeed in whatever that you're doing. And as long as you have all the help that you need, along with all the people that you need around you, you are going to find a way to succeed and to be able to make that run that you need to be able to become a very successful person. And that was what we did during that improbable run during the 8th grade season. I do really wish I know exactly what it would feel like to win that championship trophy, but hey, we made a great run, and that's just a story about never giving up. That's going to do it for this powerful story. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so every new subscriber helps. As always, be sure to comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's blogs, projects, or challenges, you name it. Leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for another video. Hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see all of you again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.